Hey everybody, and welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. Today we're going to be doing a cold air intake on this 986 Boxster. Now, there's a lot of controversy behind cold air intakes, and we'll go over all the reasons why we are doing it and explain how we're going to be doing that. But before we get into that, make sure you are following us on Instagram, Tenza_Motorsports, where we do giveaways. Also, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Let's get back into this intake install. We looked at getting some scoops. So for the side vent, we're looking at one that actually scoops air into the car. That should help keep the air flowing through this and make sure that it's getting as cold of air as the ambient outside air is. And the big reason people get upset about cold air intakes is because essentially what you're doing, and this doesn't really matter what car it's on because it's very difficult to get the intake super far away from the motor. When it's in the engine bay, you're pulling air from the engine bay, and that can be fairly warm. Other reason you would do something like this is to get the car more air. Now, again, there's another controversy behind that. Basically, if you haven't tuned the car for more air, then the car is just going to take what it needs, and that's it. The car will eventually get a tune. Anybody out there tunes these or knows anybody that does custom tunes, that'd be fantastic. Rev Match, who does all the tuning for our E46s, he does a fantastic job, but he does not tune Porsches or the 986 Boxster. This is the 2.7 liter, so if anybody knows how to tune these, that'd be fantastic. But this will give us the opportunity to pull more air in. And the other thing that cold air intakes do that I have noticed, and I would say it's a bit of placebo, but I've done it with and without the intake, basically not knowing, and it does sharpen up your throttle response and give you some more induction noise, so there is a little bit of a cool factor behind it. And honestly, as long as you're keeping track of the filter condition and you bought a filter that can be serviced and you're just kind of making sure that it's not pulling in anything dirty, there's really no big downside to something like this. So yeah, we are going to be popping our custom Cayman hatch on the back of this 986. We'll be pulling the air box out the rest of the way. We'll get to listen to kind of what it sounds like, and then we'll do an after once we get this one installed. What we'll be doing is cutting this out. I think it's one piece. So we'll be cutting this, and then we can use this as an intake tube. So we had a bit of change of plans. Basically, what we're doing is running it all the way into right behind this vent. So we took out the air duct runner here, and that basically freed up a little bit more space so we could run some piping through. Now this is the K&N filter. I believe this is a 3130. It's got a 3.5 inch intake on the other side, so 3.5 inch on that side. And what's nice about this filter is it's really narrow. This is a leftover filter off of my 330 Ci supercharger. And when we changed out the mass airflow sensor, we had to go to a bigger filter. We had to go to a 4-inch. So this one right here was leftover. So we'll take the one that we bought new for this project and probably return it. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you, it's a bit janky right now, but basically we were able to use some leftover parts and get this to run back up into here. Now, we are gonna be going online and finding some actual intake parts because this is probably not the smoothest on the inside. The inside has a lot of joints and things like that. So we'll wanna make sure that we've basically got one coming in, one elbow, and then one straight. And right now we've got a couple different pieces, making sure that everything links together. But yeah, so this will basically be as cold of air as possible, so we get that. We also are able to put the vent back on, all of that cold ambient air into the car. So as of right now, we are going to put the hose clamps back on. It was quite dirty underneath and back behind this, so we're gonna have to clean that out a little bit before we put it back together the rest of the way. The factory air box, you could potentially use this. It's so narrow right here, and what we were thinking about doing was cutting down this side across the bottom, up, and then cutting out this split here in the middle. And you could definitely put an intake right there. But we just thought, you know, since this is going to be a track build, very similar to the other BMWs we've been doing, and we thought, well, for the price of the car and everything like that, like, why not just kind of go crazy? So this is us being super crazy, is moving the air intake out behind the exterior vent. So let's get that all hooked up, and then we'll be able to take it for a test drive. So here it is off the car, and again, it looks a bit of a mess, but what we'll eventually end up doing is having a connector from here to here, and then this is kind of nice because it's not quite a 90, but it's not like a 45 or something like that, so it gives us just the right bend. But I think if we've got a 90 that just had a little bit of flex in it, that would probably work for us, and then we would go straight over into the mass airflow sensor. So this is what it looks like for right now. We'll make sure that the area that we're working in, you can see some stuff that was behind the intake runner. We'll make sure that we get all that cleaned out. And yeah, so if you're curious where all these parts came from, most of this is leftover parts from my supercharger, and then some PVC pipe that we had that we're using as a joining coupler. So this is an old mass airflow sensor that we're using as basically a spacer. And so yeah, we'll get online. And the other thing that I was curious about, intake plenums that you can buy for this car. We need to look in and see if it actually replaces this part of the intake, because this isn't the smoothest thing. But I guess that piece right there, this one, can actually be replaced. All right, so we just got back from driving it. This is so much fun to have this car, and I can't say that the throttle feels like any sharp or anything like that, because I just didn't really spend a lot of time with the car with the box in. I think I've driven it like, this probably added maybe another mile to it. So like I've done like a grand total in this car, like maybe 4 miles. What I can say is the sound, it's absolutely fantastic. That induction sound, it's perfect. I did do a video like this on an intake, a cold air intake, that obviously didn't run it all the way out to the outside of the car. And when we did the air intake temperature readings before and after, it was slightly higher. And in this case, there's no way that it's even kind of close. Where we've got the intake all the way out by the vent, and we're gonna get a scoop, and then I think we'll probably end up designing some sort of panel. So once you put the intake on there, it'll basically be like a C-shaped cutout, and you can just slide it over the intake and bolt it on, something like that. And that way we can basically ensure that the intake is on the outside of the firewall for the engine. So I really appreciate everybody so much for watching. If you had any comments or questions, leave them down in the comment section below. We did this video, if you had to pay for all this stuff outright, because this is stuff we had just had left over, I think you'd probably be in this about $100, which is nowhere near some of the intakes that come on this car. I think the only one I've really seen is like almost $1,000. And I really don't think that with the piping size that I saw, I don't think it runs it all the way out to the fender. So this can be done DIY if you're willing to get your hands all dirty, maybe get yourself cut on some hose clamps. It's not really that big of a deal, $100, and I think this would be an absolutely fantastic DIY to do on your 986 Porsche. So thanks again everybody so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
am.